Okay, students, in this video, we're gonna continue on with some more examples. What we'll do today is we'll start off with a pulley example. Now, in this example, we're gonna carry on with what we've been doing for the most part, drawing tools, dimensioning, geometric constraints. And now we're also gonna include some extrude, revolve, and then we're going to introduce these two new concepts. So this is going to be the drafting or engineering drawing and also assemblies. Okay. In this video in particular, we're going to start with some of the drafting, and then in a second video we'll continue on with assembly. Okay. Now we'll always try to fully define sketches, so position X, position Y, size and angle. That's still very important. Make sure you understand what's going on with those. Make sure what they do. Make sure you understand how to implement those into every sketch you create. Okay. Now for this example, here's basically the overview. So we're going to be working in inches for all of the components. It's only going to be 3 components, so we're going to have a bracket, a pulley, and a pin. And then finally, the steps will be to build each component and create a draft. Now this part, the create a draft, I'm probably only going to show you on how to do that on one of the components. It's going to be essentially the same for all of them. And then in a separate video, I'm going to show you how to assemble the components, okay, and how to actually start assembling stuff. Now these are the sketches for the bracket. So this is the main sketch. Here we build sort of the main body of the bracket. As you can see, we have all the dimensions. It's just 2 rectangles, really straightforward. And then what we do here is we take the outside here and then we extrude that. Now the extrusion, you can probably figure it out from here. This is that new extrusion, except it's sideways. So that total extrusion is 2 inches. And then we build a circle that will actually be used to create a hole going through the tabs, if you will. Okay, so again, this extrusion will be 2 inches, and then we can use these 2 sketches to actually make the solid. So this is what that solid is going to look like. It's that main sketch extruded by 2 inches, and then that circle extruded all the way through on both sides of the body. And then what I did here at the end is I went a step further. So now we're gonna start making things that are a little bit more pleasing to the eye, maybe ergonomic, things like that. So what we'll try to do is maybe round off some of the edges. So here we first round off the main corners, there, and there, by using the fillet tool. Notice how here we made sure that we get that semicircle perfectly, so we can figure out that dimension. And then eventually what I also did is I rounded off this outside edge on both sides to make it a little bit more pleasing as well. Okay, so that's the bracket. Now this is for the pulley. So we have 2 sketches for the pulley as well. Now this one, it might not make too much sense just yet. So for the bracket, we only use extrude. For this one, for the pulley, we're actually going to use revolve first, and then we're going to use extrude for the second step. What we're doing here is we're actually generating the main body of the pulley. Okay, so what we have is we sort of have this rectangle first, and then I created that circle to sort of make this cutout here as we revolve. Now another thing to pay close attention to is this gap here. So this main rectangle is not collinear with the x-axis at the bottom line. Okay, so we do have a gap, and if you recall from the revolve videos, that gap will represent a hole once I actually create a body. Okay, so again, just sort of take into account all these different dimensions and everything that's going on in this sketch. Again, nothing crazy complicated. It's just a rectangle and a circle. Okay, and then this sketch here, this is a sketch on a new surface from the revolve in the previous step. So once we revolve this the whole 360 degrees, we're gonna generate this sketch on one of the sides, and we'll actually use this sketch to extrude a pattern on the side of the pulley. Now that pattern, the only real reason I'm gonna do that pattern is so we can actually visualize how that pulley is behaving once we assemble all of the components together. Okay, so again, fairly straightforward. We create a uh, a construction line, sorry, vertical, so that depicts my y-axis, and then we generate this triangle, and then we generate a couple of circles on the inside, all of them being 0.25 inches in diameter. And of course you have the dimensions for the triangles there. And then we'll use that triangle sort of as a pattern 5 times around. We've seen this before, except today I'm going to show you on how to do it with actual features, not sketches. Okay, so just sort of keep that in mind, and then ultimately we're going to be ending up with something like this. Okay, and then finally we have a pin, which should be fairly simple. So all it is just a circle extruded, and of course we'll use all of the previous components to find those dimensions. But it should be straightforward. So we take the dimension, the diameter, and the length from the bracket, because it has to fit within the bracket here, right? So if we take a look at this sketch, we can figure it out. So the length is 3 inches because it has to go all the way through the 3 inches, and then of course the diameter is 1 inch in diameter because it has to fit within this hole. Okay, so let me jump into Fusion, and let's start off with the first component, which is the bracket. So what I'll do is I have a brand new file here. I'll go ahead and first of all I'm going to save it. So I'm going to save this. We created a new folder week 4. I'm going to save this as bracket, and then I'm going to make sure that my units are correct. So I'm in millimeters. I'm going to switch to inches, hit OK, and I'm going to start my first sketch. So one big rectangle and then a smaller rectangle within. So the big rectangle has to be 5 by 3, and then the smaller rectangle has to be 4 by 2, and then I have to have a distance from here to here. Come on, distance, there we go, from here to here of 1/2 inch, and of course it's 1/2 inch this way and 1/2 inch this way. And then I'm going to type E for extrude. I'm just going to select that area there, and then my extrude is going to be 2 inches. Okay, so there we have it. I'm going to create a new sketch on the side, and then I'm going to make that circle of 1 inch, and then dimensions. So from that point to this point, that's 1 inch, that's my Y, and then 1 inch this way, that's my X. There's the sketch, extrude, and then extrude all the way through. Make sure the operation is cut, you're removing material, and we're good. Okay, so this is the first part, if you will, up to this point. Now all we need to do is run off the bottom corners or edges, and then run off the whole side edge on both sides, right? So I do that by using the fillet. So what I want to do here is I want to select all 4 of the edges there, and then I'll just use 1 inch, and as you can see, that's gonna give me the entire half curvature. which is correct. Now we picked 1 inch because of course you can also figure it out from the rest of the um, sketches and stuff. That's what works out pretty good. And then what I'll do is I'll repeat the process. I'll use fillet, but this time I'm going to select all of this edge and then all of this edge on the other side as well. And for this fillet, let's try something like 0.25 inches. Okay, and now we're left off with this. Now what I'll do here is I'll go ahead and save it. So we're done with this first part. Now before I carry on with the other ones, I'm going to show you how to start doing drafting. Okay, and of course we'll try to give you more examples with drafting as we move forward. But essentially all you have to do is go hit the sign, and then a drop down menu will appear, and then all you have to do is go to drawing and select from the sign. Okay, so what that's going to do is that's going to actually select that component you have, and then it's going to generate this new menu asking you to set up a couple of things. So here it's asking me, well, do I want the full assembly? In this case it's only one component, so it doesn't really matter whether I check that or not. And then what will happen here is we're going to create a new drawing. So yes, I want that. The template we're just going to do from scratch, and then there's a couple of standards we can use. So we can either use the ASME or the ISO. I'm just going to leave it with ASME for default, and then of course my units. And then this part is very important, so I can select the sheet size for this engineering drawing, and this is completely dependent on what type of paper you're going to use. If you're going to have to print out this blueprint or this drafting or drawing, whatever you want to call it, it's just completely dependent on that size. Okay, so in this case it's a default 17 by 11. We can probably go down to A, which is I think the standard size for like office paper, and then of course 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 8.5. The only difference is the orientation. One's portrait, one's landscape. I don't know which one's which, so I'm just gonna pick this one, I guess. So the bigger and then the smaller. Yeah, so this one I'll hit OK. And then what will happen here is it's gonna switch out to this new view for that particular component. Now here it's also, if you see, I'm moving my cursor. I haven't clicked anything just yet, and it's asking me to place the base view or the parent. So in this case I'm gonna hit somewhere in the upper left corner, and then I'm going to make sure that I have everything set up here. So as you can see here, we have things like the orientation, so I can pick what's the parent. In this case it's picking the front. I can pick the side, and then that's going to give me the side. I can pick the top, and it's going to give me the top. So we can play around with some of those things. So I'll just leave the front for now. And then the style, there's a couple of things that I can pick. So I can pick visible edges. That's only going to be sort of this thing called a wireframe, where you don't actually see any shading for the body itself. It's only the visible edges, and then so it's just essentially just lines, just like a drawing. And then here we can do visible and hidden edges, so we can sort of have that view sort of like an x-ray with some see-through. And then we also have shaded and shaded with hidden edges. So shaded is essentially the same view that you would see in the other mode, just in regular modeling mode. But we can try some of the other ones. So we can try visible with hidden edges, and that's going to be a wireframe. And then we can also adjust the scale. So in this case, it's picking a 1 to 4. I can go even a little bit bigger than that, so 1 to 2. Or even 1 to 1. Okay, now what you want to do here is sort of pick something that's pretty visible, but also something that it's going to allow you to fit in more than one view. Okay, So in this case, maybe I don't know, 1 to 2 might be good enough. So we'll try that, 1 to 2, and then we don't need to mess with any of the other stuff really. I'll go ahead and hit OK. And what I can do is I can actually move. So if I type M for move, I can actually select it and then move it up or down. Like so. Okay. And then what I'll do here is now I'm gonna create other views out of this parent view. Okay, so I can go to drawing views and then select this thing called a projected view, or just type P in my keyboard. And then what I'll do is it's asking me to select the parent, so of course I'm gonna click that, and then wherever I move my cursor, it's gonna sort of rotate or transform that shape, that original component. So if I rotate it, if I move it to the right, then it's gonna do that one rotation to the right, and it's gonna give me that new view. If I sort of do like a diagonal, then it's gonna give me sort of a trigonometric or trimetric view, right? And then of course I can do top or bottom. So I can do. So here what I did is I did 3 extras and then the parent. And then of course what I'm going to do with this ones is I'm just going to move them. So I'll select them and transform them. Come on, it's not really cooperating right now. Okay, so there's one. Oh, come on. So hit it, click M in your keyboard, and then sort of click and drag it there. Okay, and then I'll repeat the process for the other one. Okay, and then maybe move this one up a little bit more, maybe. Like so. So I want to make sure everything fits. Okay. There we go. And then I'll just move this one up here a little bit more. Okay. Now, usually some of the views, what they include, for the most part, sort of as a common practice, is you always have a parent view. Sometimes, most of the time, will be the front, and then you'll have a side view, either of the two sides, and then for the most part, you'll also have either a top or bottom view, and then you'll have a 3D view. Now, for this one in particular, for the 3D view, I usually always try to have the 3D view show up or print out as the actual 3D object. So even though the other 3 are good as a wireframe, I want this one to actually show up as a solid. So what we can do is we can first click, left click once, and then right click, and then edit the view. And then what this is going to allow me is it's going to allow me to pick what style I want to use for that particular part of my draft. Okay, so I'm going to select that as a solid, and it's going to show up like that, and then I'm just going to close, and now it's going to show up as the actual component in real life. Okay, and then finally, most of this engineering drawings or drafts or whatever you want to call them, For the most part, they're always used to try to depict dimensions and sizes to people. Either like you're trying to order something online, and then you want to make sure that it fits within your design, or maybe you're trying to get these things manufactured. So you have to create the engineering drawing that you can take to a machinist, and the machinist can actually go in there, take some measurements, understand what the overall shape is, and then actually fabricate it for you. So what we'll do here is we'll actually type D um, in our keyboard for dimension, and we'll actually replicate all of the dimensions that we can see. Okay, so in this case, we can do things like, okay, that corner to this corner, and then it's going to give me that dimension, right? So very similar to what we've been doing in um, on the regular modeling part of the software. And then of course we can do things like, oh, I want to know what this radius is, so there we have it. And then maybe the location of that circle or that hole. So maybe we can do things like, okay, what's the size from here to here, and then what's the overall length from here to here, and then of course what's the this length here, maybe the thickness of the actual tabs, like so. And that's pretty much it, I guess. We can do overall like this, like this, okay? And based on all of that information, then you can actually replicate that and print it out, send it to somebody, and that somebody can actually machine it out and build it. Okay. Now, once you have an engineering drawing done, you can always just save it as an PDF as an output and print it out in a regular printer. Okay. Now, a couple of things to take from this is most of the table will automatically be filled in. So you'll have the project, in this case, because I have a project called Summer 2020, which is the main folder in Fusion, it automatically takes that, and then it gives me the title of the particular component. That's just the name that I saved the component as, in this case, bracket. And then we have a couple of other things that we can always fill in later on, right? So that's pretty much it for drafting. And then of course you save it, and then this is gonna save as a drawing, not as a model. Okay, and again we can save it in week 4. So save it. Now it's gonna be saved. You can always go back, make some adjustments, print it out, do whatever you need to do. Okay. So far we have the bracket, and of course we showed you how to generate the engineering drawing for that component. Okay. So I'm gonna now fly through the other 2 components. And again, if you need to take a look at the dimensions, you can. So this is the dimensions for the pulley. This is what's going to get revolved. So we have a rectangle of 2.5 by 2 off of the origin by 0.5. Okay. So let's go ahead and jump back to Fusion. And then in this new component, I want to save this as pulley. And then of course make sure that I'm in inches. And then start a sketch, make that first rectangle. Before I do the rectangle, I'm gonna do the y-axis, and then I'm gonna do my rectangle. So my rectangle has to be 2.5 in height by 2 in width. Okay, and then I can always move it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do collinear this edge to my y, and then I'm going to do that vertical distance of 0.5. Okay, so I just want to make sure that we're in the same page. So let me jump back to So 2.5 vertical, 2 horizontal, and then 0.5, and then of course a circle. Okay, I think we have it. 2.5 vertical. So 2.5 vertical, 2 horizontal, and then 0.5. And then finally, I just need the circle. So I can create a circle that looks like that, and that's pretty much it, right? So the circle is defined because I placed it at the midpoint, and then of course is finishing off on the side. So I have position X, position Y because of this point, and then I have the size because of this point. Okay, and then finally all I need to do from here is finish the sketch, select revolve, and then just select that area. Now for my axes, I'm not going to select that bottom edge. Instead, I'm going to select the X axis. So that, remember that 0.5 distance that we gave it, that's what's going to generate that hole in the center. Okay. And then of course, it's a new body, the whole 360, everything else is good. I'm going to hit OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back to the PDF, and I'm going to take care of this sketch. Okay. So this sketch is fairly simple. So it's a triangle of 1 by 1.5 in height, and then 0.75 off of the origin, and then a couple of circles of 0.25. Okay. So 1.25, 1.5, and then 0.75. Okay. So let's do that. I'll go ahead and create a new sketch, and of course I'm going to select the parent this way. I'll start off with the y-axis, like so, and then I'll create my triangle, like so. Okay, and then give it some dimensions. So that has to be 1. This has to be 1.5. And this has to be 0.75. Okay, and then I want to make sure that half of my triangle is that way and the other half is that way. Notice how I still have a couple of blue lines. If I click and drag, you can see how that pivots. So I don't want that. So what I'll do is I'll use the midpoint constraint for that horizontal line to my y-axis, and that's going to center it horizontally. And then finally what I'll do is I'll just add my circle, so 0.25, and then I'll just add a couple more and make them all equal to each other. Like so. And then all I need to do is use the tangent constraint to make the circles tangent to the corresponding edges, like so. And that of course is going to set the location of the circles. Okay, so there we have it. Now once I'm done with that, all I need to do is hit E on my keyboard for extrude, and then select the areas. Make sure you select the circles as well, like so. And then the actual extrusion is only going to be 0.1. Okay, I'm going to hit OK, and then that 0.1, notice how it doesn't go through anything, so I'm good. And then what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to do a pattern of that extrusion or that indent all the way around my pulley 5 times. Okay, so I'll go to create, down arrow, pattern, circular pattern, and then for my object all I need to do is select that last extrusion. Okay, and then it's going to select the whole extrusion. For my axis, I need to select that axis that goes through the pulley, so in this case my X axis. And then for the quantity, I just want to make sure it's 5. Hit OK, and then that does the pattern of the extrusion 5 times around. Okay, and then what I'll do now is I'll repeat the same process on the other side, except I don't need to build a new sketch. So what I'll do is I'll just use the same sketch that I already have. So I'll do extrude, select that sketch, if I can see it, so I'll turn it on, right? So I'll select these areas, like so. And then for my starting point, I'm going to select from object, and I'm just gonna simply select this other surface on the other side, and then the actual extrusion is gonna be a negative 0.1. Again, negative is only defining direction, is not defining the operation. The operation is cut. That's what's going to remove the material. I'm going to hit OK, and then all I need to do is repeat the same pattern, circular pattern, select that last extrusion for my axes, select that axis that I need, right there, and 5 times around. Of course, I can turn off the sketch now. So as you can see, now I have the pattern on both sides, and then all I need to do is save that model. Okay. Finally, for the last part, the last component, extremely simple, just a circle of 1 inch. See, I already messed up. I didn't modify the units, so switch to inches. There we go. 1 inch, and then just do an extrusion of 3 inches. And then we can just save this as pin. Okay, so just to sort of recapitulate, I have a bracket, I have a pulley, and I have the pin. Okay, so I'll stop this video here, and I'll actually continue on with the second part of the video, which is going to be the actual assembly of the components. Okay, so I'll see you in a bit.